whenever I got through my work day on Thursday, I went home and I was able to just kind of watch a little bit of TV. So I cut on YouTube with ads. I don't pay for anything. I'm dirt cheap, okay? I just skip that ad, or watch the whole thing if I have no skip option. That's just who I am as a person. And so I was watching some clips from Skip and Shannon. Anybody know Skip and Shannon? For those of you who don't, that is a sports talk show, okay? And so they were talking about this recent thing that happened, that there's a new scoring champion for the NBA. His name's LeBron James, okay? And so whether you like him or not, whether you think he's the GOAT or not, LeBron just broke the scoring record that was held by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Over the course of it, he's in his 20th year right now. The dude has played at a super high level for 20 years. You have to appreciate greatness at some point. You can't just act like he's trash. Clearly, he's not, okay? But as they're talking about this, it was funny because LeBron wasn't the topic of conversation. Neither was Kareem. Wasn't MJ. It wasn't Wilt. It wasn't any of those guys. They were talking about Shaquille O'Neal. Everybody knows Shaq, right? How many of you guys only recognize Shaq because of the movie Shazam? Okay, all right, just oh man, I feel so bad for you. But the reason that Shaq was a topic of conversation after all this was because Shaq had made some sobering remarks just the day prior. And as LeBron broke the record, Shaq had to come to grips with the fact that he would never be in the conversation of greatest of all time. Now you think about Shaq. Shaq's a legend, like household name. People know who Shaq is. He entered the league in 1992. He's 7'2". He was 294 pounds. Now, 294 pounds, you're like, man, that's a thick guy. No, he was not. He's 7'2". The dude looked like the most athletic individual you had ever seen. He's like, if Optimus Prime was an actual person, that was Shaq in 92. And so Shaq enters the league and he just dominates. Over his first 13 years, he averaged something like 1,815 points a year, not a game. That dude would be the champion, okay? One season, done. No, a year, he averaged that much. And it all led to, in the year 2000, he's playing for the LA Lakers, and he wins his first championship with them. Okay, so this is the start of the three-peat with Shaq and Kobe. Now, at that point in time, Shaq had added a little bit of muscle, but he was still a lean, mean machine. I mean, like you're talking about, this guy is 7'2", and he can move. And he's got footwork, and he's got power. And like, he can't shoot a free throw to save his life, but that dude, he doesn't need to. He's going to shove it down your throat. That's what he does. But even though they won the finals that year, and he averaged over 30 a game that year, there were a couple of guys in the postseason that he felt like were a little bit stronger than him. And so he committed the next few years of his life to put on some weight. And so in his peak, at like the most dominant he ever was, Shaq's not in the conversation for greatest of all time, but he is for the most dominant of all time. When Shaq was 7'2", 315, 320, I mean, just ripped, you couldn't stop him. Could not. I mean, he is the epitome of what like you would design a basketball player to be minus a jump shot. And so Shaq, in order to put on some of this weight, he had to cut back on his cardio, so he wasn't running near as much, and he had to eat a whole lot more. And what happened was over the next 2 years, Shaq put on that little bit of weight he wanted, and he was unstoppable. But he had started a pattern, and he didn't realize his metabolism's slowing down. He's getting older. So Shaq got old, and Shaq got fat. And before you knew it, it's 2005, and the guy who entered the league 7'2", 290 is now 7'2", 370. And he's like, he can't move. He's trying to play himself into shape, and part of that was the fact that he had these habits, and you can go back and catch a podcast on that one. But part of it was the fact that he didn't consider what the decision he was making in 2000, what that was going to have on his body in 2005. He was focused in right here. And so Shaq had all these comments about LeBron because Shaq played 19 seasons in the NBA, and he finished with 10,000 fewer points than LeBron currently has. And he has to live with the fact that he was as built of a prototype as you could get for someone who would dominate for a long time if he had taken care of his body. But now he lives with regret that he will never be in the conversation for greatest of all time because how he sold himself out short for a couple of rings instead of, I mean, he was averaging 30 a game anyway. He didn't really need to. He did it because he felt like that was the pressure he felt. And he sold himself out to be more dominant right now. And in the future, he dwindled to just about nothing. Over his last six seasons, Shaq, 7'2", dominant Shaq, averaged 9 points a game. He dwindled to nothing. And at the end of the segment, Shannon Sharpe said this. He said, you get one of two lifetimes, a lifetime of discipline or a lifetime of regret. You are at the formative years of that. Are you going to have a lifetime of discipline or a lifetime of regret? I think it speaks volumes that Shaq is worth over $500 million, and he made comments a week and a half ago about how much regret he has. Money doesn't equal happiness. So let's jump in for tonight. Want to know how to ruin your life? Live for immediate gratification, because that's what Shaq did. He lived for this year, the next 2 years. I'm going to be the most dominant right now, and he didn't look long term. And we do the same thing. We live for right now, what I want today, what I want to accomplish this year. And we make decisions that, I'm going to tell you this, for those next 2 years, Shaq was a freak. You could not stop him. His decision paid off in the short term. In the long term, it wreaked havoc. Some of you guys make decisions for immediate gratification today, and you go, man, my life's great. I don't need to change anything, because you're living it up and everything's fine. But you 20 years from now is going to look back and beg you to make some changes tonight. It's begging you to stop living for immediate gratification. But as we talk about this, we're not going to talk about Shaq the rest of the night. We're going to talk about what the Bible says about this stuff. So what does the Bible say about immediate gratification? 2 verses for you. First one, Proverbs 13:11. Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. You can see this longevity approach to life. This is to accumulating wealth. We all know, like Louisiana, we have the Powerball, right? When that thing gets hot, you see people putting in money all over the place. The lottery is called the poor man's tax, right? Like people go in and they think, if I only strike it rich, and you throw away all this wealth. If you look at people who have played the lottery for years, go back total the amount they spent on it, and go, hey, would you like to have that money back? They'd go, yes, I would like, because it'd be thousands and thousands of dollars. They'd be half the lottery by the end of it, probably. Maybe not that much. Like it gets to, a lot of money. Have I ever played it? No. Have I wanted to? Yes. But I'm a Christian, right? We're not allowed to do that. One person in the room that I know maybe says, I'll give it a shot. No, but the other verse that I have for you, this is the one that's going to be the main one for tonight. Proverbs 21:20. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. We do not like to be without things. We like to have nice things. Nice things are nice to have, right? If you look at the problems that are plaguing the young adults of today, chief among them is the fact that we expect to live the same type of lifestyle as that which we graduated high school. We like the comforts of what mom and dad provided for us, and now that we're adults, we don't want to have to scale back. We want to live to the same standard of living. But mom and dad had worked for how many years to get that stuff? How much of it did they get 10 years ago, and they added on this piece here, and they did this renovation here to where they actually had countertops? And you look at it, it was probably the slow process for them, and we think we should have it right now. If you look at, I've said before, some of the friends that I grew up with, they graduated, got big boy jobs, and so they lived it up. I'm from Redneckville. We want boats, we want four-wheelers, we want trucks with big tires, and we want sound systems. I talked about sound systems a couple times ago. You can see where I stand currently with those if you go back and listen. Shameless plugs for the podcast. That's 2 of them. I'm going to see if I can work in another one. All right. But those guys, they said, man, I want to be able to go fishing whenever I want to. I want to be able to go mud riding or have the four-wheeler for the deer lease and all those things. And what they didn't realize was that those things cost a lot of money. I don't know if you guys have priced a four-wheeler recently. I have, because I want one, but I also know I can't afford one right now, especially with the car situation. Can I get a herd? Okay. So they didn't realize that they had to make a whole lot more money than what they currently were to afford all those things. And so they thought, hey, I'm going to spend my Saturdays fishing. And no, you're not. You're going to spend your Saturdays now picking up another shift so that you can have that thing sitting in your garage. And so they spent their life, the early years of it, accumulating things and then not able to enjoy them. And then some of them were oil filled, and so they had all these things and they were trying to pay for them. They lost their job, and then here comes the bank to take the things back because you no longer are making the payments. And so not only do they not have the things, they now have a horrible credit score. And so they had this 20-year-old mindset that 40-year-old them would probably say, please don't sign the line. Please just go without a four-wheeler. Is a four-wheeler a necessity in life? Some of you guys might say, yes, it is. I'm going to tell you, it's not, okay? If anybody, I can't tell you how many miles I have walked in woods because I don't have a four-wheeler. If any of you guys want to donate one, I will meet you afterward right here. We'll pray, make it look holy, and then, we'll exchange the keys later, okay? But the truth is, we don't like to be without things. We want to have them now. But you see from my friends what happens whenever you live for immediate gratification. When you look at Proverbs 21:20, you see, I see three different perspectives or questions that we need to address. It's 100% talking about immediate gratification. You have choice food and olive oil, the best of the day's dining sitting in front of you. Are you going to consume all of it in one sitting like a fool? Or are you going to store it up for the time to come later? The wise person stores, the fool gulps it down. So the three questions that we're going to explore tonight are going to be, what has it taken to get here? What about the long run? And what am I getting? So first question, what has it taken to get here? Choice food is not exactly cheap. I researched best steak in the world. And I found out there is an A5 Wagyu tomahawk that is sold in Japan, and it is $1,000 per steak. Okay? I am not ever going to be able to afford that. That better be some choice beef though, right? You spend $1,000 on one steak, it better be the best. When you talk about extra virgin olive oil, which is the best of olive oil, from the time that you press it to the time that you jar it, it's 72 hours. Are you laughing at the fact that I just about fell right there? Because I almost did. Did I hide it? Okay, all right. It takes 72 hours, 3 full days for you to get olive oil once you begin pressing it. When you think about the amount that's being invested in that, what it's taken to get to that point, $1,000, 3 full days, plus other time we're going to talk about in a second, a fool would gulp that down, right? Could you imagine someone with $1,000 steak covered in an A1 sauce and there's a couple bites done? Some of you almost vomited, and I appreciate that. When you seek immediate gratification, you need to count the cost of what you have sacrificed to get to that point. Obviously, we can talk about the way immediate gratification impacts our finances. How much of my life have I dedicated to being able to purchase a $1,000 steak? How many hours working has it taken for me to make that much money? Some of you, is that a whole week's wage? Is it, okay, I have all of my bills, and if I'm saving $150 a week, it's going to take me, 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. I'm not doing the math really well on the fly, sorry about that, but it's going to take me a while to save up $1,000. Is it worth trading it for that steak? How much of my life have I given away for this moment? But remember, this is written to a lot older audience. We think in the terms of, how much work do I have to do to get the wage to then go buy? But to them, you're talking about choice beef. They had to raise that cow. They had to raise the heifer and keep her healthy so that she had a healthy calf. And once the calf comes along, they have to keep that thing alive. You're probably looking at 2 years before they harvest it, and butcher and slaughter and all that. And along that time, if you want the choice cuts of beef, you want that good marbling throughout the entire piece, you have to give it good food, ample food, so that it stores on fat. And that food ain't cheap. You're talking a long-term investment for this choice food. It's not something so whimsical as let me go down to Sam's and go get a steak. There's a lot of investment here. You think about olives. Okay, well they press the olives and it sits there and then they get the olive oil 3 days later. No, you have to prune the olive trees. And you probably don't have one, you probably have a whole vineyard of them or whatever it's called. And so a grove, it's a tree. We do groves for trees, let's do that. A grove of olive trees. And so you have to go pick them. It takes 11 pounds of olives to make 1 quart of olive oil. Looked that up this week, bet you didn't. You're welcome. I'm just educating you on all things olives, okay? The difference between green and black olives, I'm just kidding, we're not going to go there. But it takes a long time to pick 11 pounds of something this big. Any of you guys ever gone blackberry picking? Did you pick 11 pounds of it? Did you give up after about a half? Probably gave up. That's a whole lot of investment and time and resource, human resource, into getting that stuff. It adds up quickly. Part of defeating the mindset of immediate gratification is to value and appropriately value what you're about to give up for what you are looking at for the moment. And it's really easy to weigh that out when it comes to finances. Like, we can all calculate that. This is this much of that time. But what about the things that matter a little bit more? We pursue our sin the exact same way, where we don't consider what we're about to give up. We don't consider what it's taken to get to this point, and we're about to throw it away in a moment. When you're tempted to have sex with someone for the first time and you know it's a sin against God to have fornication or premarital sex, do you consider the value of your purity before you're about to throw it away? Do you consider it? For those of us who did or have, I'm going to bet that we didn't. We definitely didn't appropriately value it. In fact, I would say we probably took a moment to devalue it. That it's not something good to hold on to. That we can't wait to get rid of this thing. We can't wait to be a real man like everybody else. It's what you're supposed to do. We devalue it to convince ourselves that we're okay to do what we want. We allow our desire for immediate gratification to trump the value of what we are about to give up. I think a prime biblical example of that is in Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau are twins. Esau came out the womb first. He's the firstborn, so he has the birthright. He has the ultimate inheritance of his father. And so Esau goes out, and he's out for a couple days, and comes back and he's hungry. And Jacob, little sissy boy Jacob, been sitting at home making him bean soup. It's lentil soup. And Esau comes in and he's hungry. And he says, please give me something to eat before I die. And Jacob says, I imagine he's probably like filing his nails. So we're going to do this. You want some soup? Trade me your birthright. And Esau sells his birthright for a bowl of soup. How many of you guys are going to say, hey, here's my inheritance if you'll just bring me back a bowl of chicken tortilla from Chick-fil-A? Nobody's going to do that. You have to devalue that. You have to spurn that birthright so much to trade it for soup, right? You have to hate something to devalue it to that degree. It's what you do with your virginity. You hate the fact that you're a virgin. And so you devalue it, even though God had said, this is such a gift. It's a gift for you and your spouse, that this will be the only naked body that you see and they see, and that's the way it's supposed to be designed. But yet we devalue it and we tarnish it. How much have you devalued the gifts of God? How much do you have to hate the idea of deep godly community that you always sleep in and you never come to a small group and plug in with people who are like-minded in their beliefs? The good gift of God, of biblical community, and we hate it. How much would you have to hate your family at Thanksgiving dinner to just sit there on your phone the whole time? But how many of us do it? We have very limited time with our grandparents, aunts, uncles, our parents. A day is going to come when mom and dad aren't there, and you're going to wish you could go back and put the phone down for just 5 more minutes with them. But we don't stop and consider the value of the gift that God has given us. We've all seen the couple sitting at a restaurant. You got attractive guy, beautiful lady, and they're having dinner together, but all they're doing is sitting at the same table because both of them just staring at a screen. They walked in together, they'll walk out together, but they were so far apart the entire time because they didn't value who was sitting right in front of them. But that's because in our day and age, we are literally being rewired. Like your brain, the neural pathways are being reconfigured for those serotonin and dopamine hits like Kevin was talking about earlier. That we are being told a digital gratification is better than a real gratification. And it's more instant. It's immediate. We get it. Boom, there it is. And I'm guilty of it too. I had a sobering realization a couple years ago. My wife was walking out of the door. And I think it's an afternoon, like we both had a long day. And she walks out and she says, bye, I love you. I can't remember where she was going. And I didn't even look up from the TV. I'm probably watching a hunting show because that's who I am. And I said, love you too. And as she walked out and the door shut, it was like God just woke me up. And I thought to myself, heaven forbid, the most tragic thing happens and she dies while she's gone. Is that how I want to remember how I treated my wife? And now I see my daughter and I know that she's looking at me and my wife for the picture of what a godly marriage is supposed to be. And if someone had to ask her, if I still acted like that, if someone said, hey, does your dad love your mom? How can she look him in the eye and say, yeah, absolutely? Is that the picture of marriage that I'm showing my little girl? What's she going to expect from a husband if that's the way that the one that she saw lived? Those questions lead me to make a change. See, a fool doesn't value the things that he has. He doesn't value them appropriately, at least. And I want you to value the gifts of God, your purity, your friends, your financial freedom. You may not have a lot of financial freedom, but you got some, right? The fool treats the A5 tomahawk like they would an Outback sirloin. That's what they do. They treat the lesser as just as good as the supreme. And we do the same junk. I think all of us are guilty of it. That we treat the good, perfect gifts of God as if they are menial and dispensable. Learn to value the gifts you've been given. Second question, what about the long run? Now, the first question says, what's it taken to get to this point? This one says, what are you giving up in the future? In economics, this is called opportunity cost. Anybody heard that term before? How many of you guys willingly forgot it? Okay, no? All right. Opportunity cost. It's counting the value of what you are spending currently against every other thing you could use that money for. When I thought about the A5 tomahawk, I think there's one person, if they had $1,000 just sitting around, that they're in this room right now, if there's one person that they might go buy that steak, and it's Daniel Bacon. I feel like Daniel would go and he would possibly buy the steak. And so I said, well, what does Daniel need? What else would he spend that money on? Well, Daniel does woodworking. And he also does like remodeling. And so this is a plug for Bacon Woodworks. If you have any other things that you need taken care of at your house, please go see my man over here afterwards, all right? So Daniel, I'm sure, could probably use some 2x4s at some point. I figured out he could buy 298 2x4s, at least the cheap ones. You might not be the ones you want to build something with. But he bought 298 2x4s instead of one steak. Or, hey, you got to just grab something quick and go, and you got to eat quickly. And so you might go get Little Caesars pizza. You can get 183 Little Caesars pizzas with $1,000. Or maybe you're just like everybody else, like, man, I just need gas in my truck. I got to get to work and get back. 16 and a half tanks of gas at $60 a tank. Those are the things he could get. The list could go on and on. That's opportunity cost. What else could I have done with this resource? Now, when's the last time that you counted the cost of the things you're throwing your money at that you probably shouldn't? And maybe it's not wise. Maybe you just need to revisit and say, is this the wisest thing? Is this what I should be doing? How many of you are throwing money at car interest notes at 12% interest thinking it's a good thing? You haven't actually stopped to consider what you are giving up. Maybe go trade that in for a little hoopty for a few $1,000s and drive it around till the wheels fall off, save some money, pay cash, and just walk out owning a car. And that way you don't waste all that money on interest. I'm not telling you what to do. I just think that might be a better decision. I did the math this past week. The average young adult, and I'm going to tell you there are people in this room that are far above that average. There are people in here who are far below. I applaud you. The average young adult spends $350 per month on fast food alone. That does not count coffee. That does not count sit-down restaurants. That does not count your groceries. That is fast food, okay? This is the Firehouse Subs tax. Over the course of a year, that's $4,200. Over the course of your 20s, that's $42,000 that you have spent on fast food alone. The average salary of a college-educated individual in Louisiana is $41,000 a year. Non-college educated, it's a little less than $30,000. You are literally spending an entire year's salary for the average Louisianian on fast food over a course of a decade. That's 1 in 10 years, and so to use biblical terms, you have just tithed to Whataburger and Panda Express, and they graciously accept your donations. Now let me ask you, for you guys who are still in your 20s, how would 30-year-old you like to use that $40,000? For you guys who are in your 30s, how would 40-year-old you like to use that $40,000? Or maybe you're 20 right now and you're thinking about 40-year-old you, and that would be 2 decades, and you could save $84,000 on fast food if you made a decision today. But that looks for delayed gratification, doesn't it? That has to look and say, you know what, I'm really hungry right now, but I'm wasting a lot. And don't get me wrong, that Whataburger is delicious. It is. It's great. I love it. Number 2, plain meat and cheese only because I'm a 5-year-old. Yes. I get an amen for that. Oh man, I hope you pay attention to the rest. So we like it because it's quick, tastes good, it's right there. It's where we socialize, right? Hey, let's go get some food together, check up on each other. That's fine. I'm not saying you should cut everything out. But evaluate, is this the wisest decision for me to make right now? Because in 10 years, you're not going to remember how that Whataburger tasted today or tomorrow whenever you get it. But in 10 years, if you had a lump sum of $40,000, you look back on present you and say, thank you very, very much. It's really easy, again, to count opportunity costs whenever it comes to finances. But what about the other choices that we make? Is it worth it to you to keep watching porn every night, to suffer from erectile dysfunction when you're married and a real woman's in front of you and you're 27 years old? Because statistics are showing that it's happening at a very frequent rate. 27, 26, 25, and it's because your brain is being rewired as you watch to be stimulated by something that a woman is actually not supposed to do, that she's nothing like. And you're going to get to a marriage and your sex life is going to be very, very difficult because of the choices that you keep on making night after night. Are you ready when you think, yeah, I want to have sex with whoever, whenever? I'm ready to get rid of this burden of my purity. Are you ready when you're 21 for her to say, hey, I took a pregnancy test and it's positive, and you're working part-time and you're trying to go to school and now you have to make some big decisions? You ready for that moment? Did you consider that whenever you were making the decision for the immediate gratification? Is it worth the scarred memories on your wedding night as you walk into the hotel room or wedding suite or whatever it is with your spouse, and all you have are flashbacks from the people that you spent so many nights with before? Maybe it was one person, and you just made a whole lot of memories with them. And then one other thing to consider, I think there's a lot of people in the room that had a dad that never went without a case of Bud Light sitting in a fridge. But whenever it came time for you to go to college, there wasn't money for college. And I bet if you totaled up all that was spent on alcohol in your household, we could have paid for college a couple times. And I say that to say immediate gratification can not only ruin your life, but it can ruin somebody else's that's close to you. You can't pretend the decisions you make today have no future consequence. There's an opportunity cost, and it's time for you to consider it. But the beauty of opportunity costs is that it also helps us evaluate the better way. You think about the choice food and olive oil. It says a wise stores up. Why? Because there's going to be lean times ahead. The wise person says, hey, I'm not going to eat all of my food in the fall because I've got to make it through winter. And then on the other side of winter, that's the time of abundance. And what you see there is a pattern. I'm not going to waste it all on today because I know tomorrow's going to have some trial. But on the other side of tomorrow, that's where I'm going to find my joy. There's something better down the line. Take the positive approach to the decisions you're making. What's the better way you could use it? The average young adult spends 3 hours a night watching TV. So let's play a little hypothetical here. We all like the idea of reading the Bible in a year. There's all kinds of different plans you can go. Our church is currently doing. If you want to jump on with us, come on. If you took 2 out of the 3 hours on TV and you read the Bible for 2 hours, you could read the Bible cover to cover 9 times in a year at the average pace of reading. 2 hours, that's a long time to read. I'd probably fall asleep. 1 hour. You'd read through the Bible cover to cover 4.5 times. An hour is still a long time. 30 minutes. Read through the Bible, 2.25. 15 minutes a night. You'd read through the Bible in a year. If you set aside 15 of the 3 hours you're already wasting away. What's the better approach? What if instead of snoozing for those 9 minutes every morning, who's my snoozers in the room? You waste those 9 minutes, right? It's like you shut your eyes, you open them back up, and you're like, did I actually sleep? I think the clock's broken and it just went off again. It is the most wasted 9 minutes in America, from like 6 to 6:09. It has zero value for you to go ahead and hit that snooze button. So what if instead you got up and you said, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pray for 9 minutes. If you prayed for the time you snooze, if you snooze one time, some of you guys are those 5-time snoozers, okay? Yeah, you know who you are in the room. You don't have to raise a hand, okay? I don't want to shame you like that. If you spent one snooze time in prayer every morning, you would pray intentionally for 54.6 hours a year, just in your snooze time. What about a deeper level? Something that's more intentional and thought-provoking, puts someone else first. If I buy one less coffee for me a week, I could buy and treat coffee to somebody else, and I could invest in them, and I could make sure, like, hey, why don't you come with me? It's on me. And so now we get to have the conversation. I get to check on them, and there's this actual relationship that's made instead of just a drive-through window. Hey, how are you doing? Skinny vanilla latte. I'm doing fine today. How are you? If you gave 5 minutes to call someone on your way to work, just say, hey, how are you doing? How much more would they know that you love them? There's practical things that you could do. And I'm going to tell you this. Most people in here want to get married. And for your future marriage, you better learn the value of delayed gratification. You better. You better learn the joy of gratification that actually isn't for you. You have your delayed gratification and your spouse being loved on and being heard and them having their joy filled up. Because if you want a deep, loving marriage, one that gets past all the frailty and age and wrinkles and sickness and every other hard thing, one that shows Christ to everyone who looks at it. We all see those old people and we go, man, I want to be like them. You know what? They went through a very long process to get to where they are. There were a lot of ups and downs. There's a lot of tough conversations, a lot of long nights, a lot of tough moments. And that gives you the formula. Discipline plus commitment over time, that's whenever you're going to find success. I don't care if you're talking about LeBron James, you're talking about your marriage. It applies. LeBron couldn't be the scoring champion if he didn't have discipline and be committed to the game over time. Discipline over a short time, what value is there? Commitment with no discipline, you're flaky. Discipline plus commitment over time, that's where you will find success. Rome wasn't built in a day. The rock didn't get ripped in a week. Neither did I. Love isn't deep because you said a vow. Went and had lunch with Danny and Abigail earlier, and Jared. Jared was also there, but he's not going to be in the marriage, so we're going to mention him. But here you go. Love you, dude. Went with them. They're going to say vows in a couple weeks, and it's going to be a great moment. And they could say words, and if they don't mean them, they're pointless. They're vain. Love is living out the vow. Brings us to our third question for tonight. You should get that. Don't snooze. Don't snooze. It'll happen again in 9 minutes, okay? Third question, what am I getting? What am I getting? See, the first one looks at, okay, what have I committed to get to this point? Second question says, okay, after this, what's going to happen? You play the what if game. And this one right here says, okay, how's this going to impact me? How's this going to be personal? This is the substance that creates or appears from the course of action. This is the personal effect. There was a study done that was called the marshmallow test. Some of you guys might be familiar with it. And ironically, I read about it, and then it popped up like 8 times in ways that I didn't even expect it, okay? Google is definitely listening in on your phone. You're all going to get stuff from marshmallow test after this. So the marshmallow test, they had 5 and 6-year-olds. They sat them in a room. They put one marshmallow in front of them. And they said, hey, you can have one marshmallow now, or in 10 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. And so the adult walks out of the room, and here's this kid left with 1 marshmallow sitting right in front of them. And they have the promise of 2 and the reality of 1. And so they watched them as they sat on their hands. They kind of squirmed. And some of them got like this close to the marshmallow. And they just looked at it. And then some of them ate that marshmallow to the glory of God. They really did. I mean, they just took it. They were like, live it up. Here we go. But this was a longitudinal study. They wanted to see if at 5 and 6, do the same patterns of decision-making happen later on. And what they found was that the kids who were able to delay gratification that young and wait on 2 marshmallows were far more successful in their adult lives They were far more successful in their careers as far as position. They were more successful on an average salary, which makes sense according to the first one. Their marriages lasted longer. Like there were real effects to these kids by just observing that they could delay gratification from a marshmallow. And I was listening to Jordan Peterson talk about it, and he said something that simple, profound. He said it's so difficult for us to look at something tangible and present and say it would be better for me to wait for something abstract and futuristic. This one we can see, we can touch, we can hold. It's here, I can have it. It's promised to you. The other one is hoped for. You can have the promise of it, but there's this hope element that comes in that causes you to doubt. And so you settle for something lesser because you don't feel quite certain that you're going to get it. Or the temptation in the moment is so overwhelming. For us, it's not marshmallows. It's not Southern-made donuts. It's the appearance of happiness, the appearance of satisfaction, momentary peace or glee, and in the end, it does not deliver on its promise. You think I'd be better off over here because I'd make more money, and so you quit the job, but then you realize you're going over there and you're having to work longer hours, harder hours, worse work environment, and so you begin to wonder, was this the right decision? I made it impulsively because my immediate gratification says make more money. We jump into a relationship because we're tired of feeling lonely, and if I can just have someone who I can call a boyfriend or a girlfriend, my loneliness will be cured, and you will find out that is not the case. You will be left wanting. You get broken up with, and you don't want to face it, and you don't want to actually have to deal with those emotions. And so you drown your sorrows in tequila shots and mixed drinks and happy hour margaritas, and you end up becoming an alcoholic, lose your job, lose your house, and make Taylor Swift a whole lot of money because she takes what happened to you and makes a song out of it, right? It's the only person going to benefit. Your life is going to be in ruins because you went for something that was the quick fix now instead of actually dealing with the problems. I'm thinking about things that statistically 50% of the room is going to have to go through, maybe just a little under. It's divorce. Do you consider the opportunity cost, what it's taken to get here, and then how it's going to actually impact you in the long run? Do you consider the trauma that's about to wreak havoc on your life, the spouse that you might be leaving, your kids if you have them, your extended family, your friend groups? For the Christian in the room, what are you saying about the God that you serve? And don't get me wrong, there's biblical grounds for divorce. I'm not saying all divorce is sinful. But even whenever there's grounds for divorce, it shouldn't be a decision that says, I'm out, I'm gone. You cheated on me, I'm out. God says I can, I'm leaving you. No. It's somebody who says, the moment that they say, hey, I slept with somebody else, and you say, we're getting a divorce. If that's your immediate reaction, you were looking for a way out anyway. Because whenever I look at marriage, it says it's supposed to reflect Christ in the church. What are you saying about the God that you serve if the moment you can get out, you're done? Because the God that I see in Scripture, He calls us an adulterous generation over and over. You say you worship me, and then you go prostitute yourselves away and serve yourself. But anytime you come back, I'm right here waiting on you. He doesn't leave. He holds His covenant. And so I would encourage you, if some of you go through the hard things like that in life, consider, what am I saying about the God that I serve? And then what is this really going to do to the rest of my life? Immediate gratification and delayed gratification are not found in the Bible. You have, gratify the flesh. But Scripture gives two very clear pictures of life, and one is the fool who takes the gifts he's been given and he gulps them down, and the other one looks at the value and counts it and stores it up. In the New Testament, we find a great word that sums up delayed gratification, and it's the word long-suffering. Long-suffering. Not long joy, long-suffering. It's to wait with patient endurance. It's the one who's able to persevere through all kinds of trials and hardships for a greater joy that is to come. Would this moment be pleasurable? Yes. Is the moment in the future better? Absolutely. If you could see the future and what joy you could have if you don't make these decisions right now, if you choose the other course, you see the joy here, you would go back and say, hey, this is so much better. So much better. Don't do it here. How many people in here, I'm not asking you to raise your hand, you live with regret because whenever you were a teenager, you got told you need to have sex to be cool, and you did, and now here you are at 25, 26 years old, and if you could, you'd go back and say, 16-year-old me, don't. He's using you. It's pointless. It says long suffering. There's something greater that is to come. You guys know that I love to hunt. I really do. And my greatest accomplishment in hunting is I got to tag an elk in 2020. And I remember after the arrow flew and hit its target, I remember seeing my buddy Chris. He was like on this hillside over here, and there's brush like this high. And I see Chris's hands going through the brush. And he's running, and every now and then I see his face and this huge smile. And there goes about 5 steps, and then his hands disappear. Because dude just tripped and fell. So he's running, fall. Running, fall. We're playing red light, green light, whatever the name of the game is. Like, that's what's going on right here. And I have that joy of that moment in my head. And it's something I will never forget. But I will also never forget the steep mountainsides that we went up and down the days before, and we never saw an elk, and our legs were burning. And I remember seeing Chris take his boots off, and there are blisters just massive on there, and there's so much pain, and we're patching up, and we're making it 6 steps and having to sit down, and we're wondering, is this worth it? There was so much suffering to have something that we all look back on with a greater joy. For you guys, there are things in the future you really want that you know there's going to be some joy. Some of you guys, you want to retire. You don't get to retirement without some long-suffering decisions financially. You have to give up some things now to have some schedule freedom later on. There's long-suffering to marriage. Pushing through all the ups and downs is how you get to 55 years. And long-suffering, delayed gratification, is what every Christian should set their eyes on. We set our eyes on life to come, life with Christ. Paul says this in 2 Corinthians 4, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all." So much better. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. He's talking about the same thing Jordan Peterson was. It's hard to give up the things that are seen and here right now for something that's the hope to come. But Paul says, hey, the things right now, they're going to pass away. But the hope to come, that's eternal. He doesn't say that being a Christian takes away your troubles, that following Jesus means everything's going to be easy, that you're going to be healthy and wealthy and wise all of your days and you're never going to sin again. Doesn't say that. But it gives us perspective. The present world is fading and passing away. Generations come and go. Precious metals rust. Peter says, grass and flowers wither and fall, but the word of the Lord endures forever. One thing will remain, and that is Jesus Christ. Fix your eyes on the thing that is better. It's so much tougher right now to delay that gratification, to have a life with Christ. It's tougher, but it's better. It's not as quick, but it's a deeper joy than you could ever experience here on this earth. So how about this? How about we stop living for immediate gratification and we start living for ultimate gratification? How about that? A better life with Jesus Christ, where sin and shame and guilt that weigh on you exist no more. And there is only joy. Trade your present comfort for eternal joy. Because whenever you think about it, that's exactly what Jesus did. Hebrews 12, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. He endured the cross for a greater joy. I'm sure it would have been a lot more comfortable for Jesus to say, you know what, if I just kind of back down right here, all of this is over. It'd been a lot easier and the pain over quicker if he wouldn't have been disciplined and committed for his purpose in the Father's plan. But he endured every strike and lash and nail for a greater joy, and that joy was you. You and I are why Jesus Christ endured the cross. He gave his life to forgive our sins so that we might have the hope of a greater joy. We could always look to something better. In the present moment when the trials hit and we feel like this life is meaningless, because really it is, we look and say, but there's something better to come.